I like going into difficult problems. I hate going into jobs where I'm just pushing the buttons that the guy or the person before me pushed. I want to create my own buttons, create my own control panel. So don't always say no to the unknown.
Welcome to Leading with Relevance. This is actually our 22nd episode. I can't believe how many we've gone through already, meeting with great people. And I always like to say, what I like to find is people that are busting through the status quo, impacting companies and community. And certainly our guest today qualifies for that 100%. The interviews are highlighted by personal and professional journeys and each leader's why, as Simon Sinek would say. For listeners, hopefully you'll find some practical insights you can apply to your leadership pathway. I'm Tino Mantella, Chief Strategy Officer for Relevance, and loving the opportunity to talk and learn to leaders. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Brian McGowan. McGowan, who I've known for years, and we were just talking about how many years it's been since we last talked, but he's been in economic development for over 20 years with a sterling track record, including economic development related to government. He was appointed by President Obama as U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and he served as the Economic Solutions Team lead in the National Incident Command that was activated by the president to respond to the BP oil spill. I'm sure most of you remember that. Prior to that, he was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger to serve as Deputy Secretary of Commerce for the state of California. More locally here, Governor Deal appointed McGowan to the board of Fort McPherson Redevelopment Authority, where he served for 5 years. In Atlanta, he served as CEO of Invest Atlanta and the CEO of the Atlanta Beltline when it was in certainly its earlier stages. McGowan was also executive vice president and CEO of the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, which is one of the top chambers in the world. And he was founding CEO of the Greater Seattle Partners, which promoted and grew one of the most economically influential regions in the world. He has a BA in political science from UC Riverside, an MA in politics, economics, and business from Claremont Graduate University, where he was the Michael and Mary Johnson Fellow in American Politics. He's on a number of boards, including Atlanta Visitors Convention Bureau, Central Atlanta Progress, Fulton County Sheriff Foundation, and the International Economic Council, to name a few. He's been awarded for a number of different recognitions, including Georgia Trend's 100 Most Influential Georgians in the class of 2026. And in November 2010, he was given a Coast Guard Commander's Award for civilian service. Today, he's the president of Centennial Yards, where he's leading a $5 billion plus redevelopment at Atlanta's 50-acre gulch, as it's called, in 8 million square feet of sports adjacent entertainment district and housing and hotels and retail and Live Nation venue. It's just going to be amazing, and certainly time to activate during the FIFA World Cup, which we're all looking forward to. So welcome, Brian.
First
That
of
was
all, I
long.
apologize for having so many jobs. You need a glass of water after all of that.
I can identify with
I
that
feel
though.
like I'm
So we
100 years.
like to have new experiences and new challenges. And I would think Centennial Yards is one of those. But before I get into that, maybe just I like to start out in your early years, like what shaped you in your early
Yeah,
part of your
yeah,
life, maybe 2 or 3 people that influenced you.
yeah. Um, I was really influenced by being a part of a big immigrant family. So my mother's an Irish immigrant. My father's parents are both Irish immigrants. Both had settled in the Bronx in New York City, which is where I was born and started my life. I have my mother was one of 10, I'm one of 7. So we
Wow.
have family members all over the world. And I think that really shaped a few things. One is I feel like I'm more of a global citizen than I am of anything. I'm a proud American, of course, but I think I've always grown up with this more broad view of the world. Um, and back to the proud American, that my family were very, very patriotic Americans. I was just telling my assistant the 2 biggest holidays in my growing up was the 4th of July and St. Patrick's Day. And I think it was, my grandfather, my father's father, left Ireland under difficult circumstances in the 1920s. There was the Irish rebellion and revolution, and then Civil War. And he and his brother kind of came to the United States looking for economic opportunity. So they kind of were fleeing, a difficult situation in Ireland. And then my mother, when she immigrated in the 60s, same thing. There was no jobs. So she and her sisters and brothers all, and her father, in fact, my grandfather, had to work abroad. And I say all that to say that all gives me this kind of very uh, uh, admiration, pride for America, for the opportunities it gave to not only me, but obviously my parents, my grandparents, and cousins and aunts and uncles, and also kind of instills in me a sense of civicness, I would say. When the Irish immigrated to the U.S., we all know they become mayors and they become chiefs of police and they
Yeah.
become presidents. The Irish come and become part of the fabric of the community. So that all really inspired me to want to get into government.
Yeah, that's great. And there's a lot of parallels with my Italian ancestry
Yeah.
related to that.
Yeah.
Grandparents came
In
over.
fact, the town I grew up in when we left the Bronx was Ridgefield, New Jersey, in
Oh,
Bergen County.
yeah.
When I grew up, it was rare to find an Irish family. It was all Italians.
All Italians, yeah.
Everybody was
In,
Italian.
in that part of New Jersey, for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
So, in the United States, I think you've described yourself as bi-coastal. So, and given your introduction there and what I knew about you already is, West Coast leadership, East Coast leadership. Uh, Talk about the differences in that, and the similarities. Obviously, when people talk about the West Coast and the East Coast and Southwest, you start to hear a lot of differences in terms of how people make decisions.
Yeah, it's a great, difficult question. I think what it did for me was it gave me, like, depending on where you're from, and most people actually, wherever they're born, they kind of live the rest of their lives within, I don't know, it's like a half an hour of where they were
Right.
born. I think, again, I blame this on my Irishness. The Irish tend to, keep moving further and want to know what's around the next corner. I think for me, I'm a very curious person. I get bored easily. So I think that kind of drove me around the country a little bit, just looking to discover different things. But I'm a non-resident fellow at the Brookings Institute in the
Yeah.
Metropolitan Program, and I'm really fascinated by, why like certain parts of the country have stronger economies than other parts of the country. But even more importantly, it's just America is such an amazing place. We have so many different cultures and different accents in different parts of the country. I mean, Northern California and Southern California have different accents. I spent time in Louisiana on the oil spill and obviously New York and now in the South. And I'm just very curious about Americans generally. Um, and I think for me, uh, looking at like California is a remarkable place. A lot of us already know the statistics. It's the fourth or fifth biggest economy in the world. There's more Nobel laureates and more universities and more technology and innovation coming out of California than any place else in the United States. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is it's so big. But secondly, it's just Californians are very innovative and creative. And that's not because you were born in California. It's because people who are born in other places who are very innovative and creative want to be in California for lots of reasons, for that culture of openness and creativity, but also the weather. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful place to live. So it really drives a lot of innovation there. And I do think having moved around the country and done economic development in different places like Atlanta, and when I was in the Obama administration, I worked, moved around the country. I think we get a little insulated or insular about ourselves instead of challenging ourselves to be better versions of ourselves. We try to compare ourselves to other places, which I don't think is it's not normally, I don't think it's helpful to do that. And Seattle was the place that taught me that, where, in Atlanta, we're very big on the rankings. We're the number one state to do business. We're the busiest airport. We're top three, top four. Seattle doesn't care about that. They don't see the rest of the world as their competition. They see themselves as their own competition. So when I was running Greater Seattle Partners, I would bring to my board, I'm like, the University of Washington ranks as the one of the top five research universities in the world. And I actually said that to the president of the University of Washington, Anne Marie Cosse. And she's like, yeah, those rankings are irrelevant to us.
Hmm.
And when Microsoft broke $1 trillion in market value, I don't know, 6 years ago, I called the president of Microsoft who was on my board and I said, can we do a press release about that? And he said, no, it's a meaningless number to us. We don't care about that. Um, so I do think it's like, for me, moving around really kind of helped me think differently about and be a better economic developer here in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, and sometimes you think a contrast of the East and the West, and there are differences, but it is true that Atlanta does put a lot of pride into being the number one place to do business, kind of thing. So,
And that's a great thing.
yeah, yeah,
It's better than being number 10.
that is true. Yeah,
But there's more to it than that.
yeah, yeah. Really good point. So,
And an example there is, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, we're the number one place to do business, but we're also the Atlanta is the worst city in America for economic inequality. So we're literally the worst. And so
yeah.
you're
Wow.
going to pay attention to rankings, pay attention to all the rankings, not just
Yeah.
the ones that place you in the top five. In particular, you should pay attention to the ones that put you in the bottom five.
Yeah, I love that point. And it's kind of like my years running a leadership development company, where that one of the assessments that most people know is strength finders. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
good,
right.
good to focus on your strengths and build on your strengths. And I've always said, well, yeah, but how do you get those things that are weaknesses up? Yeah,
Exactly.
because that's how you become a better human and a better leader. So
Amen.
speaking of leadership, I mean, you've had an amazing opportunity to work with some of the most known people in the world ever. But two, for example, President Obama and
Yeah,
Governor
yeah,
Schwarzenegger. So
yeah.
the question I was going to ask is memorable moments, stories. I mean, I'm sure you have so many, but maybe
I
more
have so many.
importantly, accomplishments that you feel that you really are proud of there. So many, I'm sure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean they were two obviously very, very different, iconic people. I was very lucky, fortunate to have landed in jobs that allowed me to be around them and travel with them a little bit and get to know them a little bit. Very different leadership styles, but what they had in common was they're both extraordinarily charismatic,
yes.
obviously. Like you said, two of the most recognizable people in the world. In fact, when I worked for Arnold, I was running the economic development program for the state of California. And I think my first week, I was sitting with a bunch of people in the governor's office, and I said, we really should use the governor as the spokesperson for, economic development. I said, I had just Googled it at the time, and I said, he's the third most recognizable human being on the planet.
Wow.
And one of the staffers looked at me and says, don't ever let him hear you say that. He thinks he's the most recognizable person on the planet. Um, so that, being around people like that who are just not only charismatic, but just super successful in their own rights. These are two people that were really good at almost everything they tried. And Arnold is the perfect example as an immigrant.
Yeah.
And then he had, small businesses. He had a supplement company. Then he bought an apartment building, and then he started a magazine and
A little bit
became
of
the number one
acting along the way.
bodybuilder in the world, became an actor, became a governor. Like, very few human beings are able to be good at every single thing that they try to do.
Yeah. It's a good point.
So it was fun to be around that. But I think, Arnold was a big thinker. And so if you had an idea, it had to be a really big idea.
Okay.
Otherwise, you weren't going to get his interest. And President Obama was somebody who, in particular with the oil spill work, that was very engaged in even the details. Sometimes you think CEOs, executives at that level aren't going to dive in and study the details and do all the reading of every document before they walk into a meeting. But President Obama did. If you walked into a meeting with President Obama, you had to be prepared and had to have done your homework.
Yeah, it's interesting the similarities about being big personalities, but also successful. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I was in Chicago when President Obama was doing community service type of work, and got to know Michelle Obama a little bit as well, and just
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
yeah, great people, and great vision, and yeah, so very interesting. So I want to make sure we move and have time to talk about Centennial Yards. How did you
Yeah.
first get involved with that? And
Yeah, yeah.
then yeah, let's start there, I guess.
So about oh my God, I've been on this job. I'm coming up on 5 years in May, which I,
Well,
I just almost can't believe. But I was CEO of Greater Seattle Partners, living in Seattle, which is a fantastic, beautiful place to live. And but it was during the pandemic, and my wife and I missed Atlanta. We definitely, I think, sometimes you have to leave a place
to
or
miss
a
it more.
girl or a relationship to realize that was the one.
Yeah,
Atlanta sort of had that feeling for us. I think we left and then realized how much we loved it here and we wanted to get back. And so I always tell young people, if you want something, you have to tell the universe you want it. Otherwise, it just remains a secret. And so I started letting friends in Atlanta know, and I obviously maintained all my
yeah,
connections and friendships here, and starting letting friends know that I was looking to come back to Atlanta for a great opportunity. And I kept repeating that and had friends call and say, "Hey, here's this new opportunity. What do you think of this?" And I was like, "No, not that doesn't fit." And I wasn't in a rush either. But I get a call from I don't know if you know KP Ready,
yeah.
but of course you know KP. So KP is a very successful serial entrepreneur. Went to Georgia Tech, and he was doing consulting for CIM Group, which is the company that owns Centennial Yards. And he called me one day in Seattle and said, "Hey, I was just on a call with the CIM guys, and they were asking me questions that I thought only an economic developer could answer. And so I suggested they talk to you. Are you willing to talk to them?" And I was like, "Of course I'm willing to talk to
Yeah,
them." So I
sure.
jumped on a call with them and we talked for about an hour. I think as we hit the hour mark, I started looking at my watch and thinking I got to go back to work. And so I ended the call by saying, "I'm going to be in Atlanta in a month and a half. I have a niece that's getting married there. If you want to meet again, give me a call." So 2, 3 weeks later, I get a call and they said, "Yes, when you come to Atlanta, we'd like to sit with you." So I did. I set up another meeting, and same thing. About an hour into it, I started looking at my watch, and the gentleman who was interviewing me or talking to me, I didn't realize it was an interview. His name was Devin McCorkle, and Devin says, "You're probably wondering what this is about." And I said, "I am." And he said, "We're looking for a president and CEO for Centennial Yards." And then he goes, "Is that something you'd be interested in?" And my answer was, "Oh, hell yeah, I would definitely be interested in that." And the first thing that it's funny, the first thing that went through my mind was, um, I can help you find somebody who could do that job. That was
Yeah,
the first thing. I didn't think, like, the very first thought was not me.
yeah,
And then he said, "Is that something you'd be interested in?" And I was like,
right.
"Oh, hell yeah." And the reason for me was it's all the things I've been doing my whole career as an economic
Yeah,
development. It's affordable housing, it's community engagement, it's incentives, it's economic development, business attraction, business retention, building a community, a neighborhood, affordable housing, all of that kind of, I was like, my wheels started turning like, that's something I think I would really love to do. So I said yes, and long story short, I got the job.
yeah. So what was the for some people that maybe not don't know as much about Centennial Yards, what was the
Yeah.
origin of that? How did it come about?
Yeah, great question. The origin story is a billionaire private equity businessman from Los Angeles bought the Atlanta Hawks. So Tony Ressler
Yeah.
founder of Aries Management, bought the Atlanta Hawks. And Steve Koonin, the president of the Hawks, tells the story. I've repeated it 100 times. He was with Tony in State Farm Arena when Tony made the decision, yes, I'm going to buy the Hawks. Steve says he walked him out to the front of State Farm Arena. For those Atlantans in the room, picture the front of State Farm Arena. And he went to get into his SUV that took him back to his plane, and he stepped up on the running board. Tony did. Stepped up on the running board, looked over the roof into what we call the Gulch, and turned to Steve and said, "What's that?" And Steve says, "That's the Gulch." And Tony, being from LA, says, "What's a Gulch?"
Right.
And Steve says, "Well, that's where people tailgate." And Steve kind of chuckles when he says that because he was like, "Not a great answer, but the truth. That's where
Yeah.
people tailgate." And so Tony said, "I want LA Live there." So anybody familiar with LA Live? LA Live was one of the first, I wouldn't say original, but one of the first modern sports adjacent entertainment districts. It's in downtown LA. It was Staples Center, which is now Crypto Arena. And there was a big convention center, and there was just a whole bunch of parking lots around it. A developer came in and started acquiring the property and developed it into what it is today. So that really was the inspiration. So Tony calls his brother Richard. Richard Ressler is one of the founders and chairman of CIM Group. So CIM Group is also a Los Angeles-based company. We do a number of things. We're a real estate investment firm. So we have a development arm, we have a lending arm, and we have an infrastructure arm. We also have a hospitality division. So we own hotels. So he called his brother, Richard. Richard sends a team out and then begins the process of acquisition of the Gulch. That was 11 years ago.
That's a great story. And
Yeah,
the you've referred to it, I think, as city within a city, but where does it stand now? And
yeah,
I got to
yeah,
interview David Cummings, who I know you know, in a
yeah.
podcast. And of course, they bought 83 buildings downtown, and everybody's sort of rushing to have something done or completed by the World Cup.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about where you guys stand and how it's going and what it's going to look like by World Cup Day. We won't hold you to it if it's a little short.
Yeah, no, you can't hold me to it. Where everybody here is stressed out of their minds right now, just trying to, get things done. But
Yeah.
so the whole project is 50 acres. So it's enormous. It's 50 acres. It'll be at the end of the day, it's a $5 or $6 billion project. So we're going to build 2 to 3 thousand apartments. We're going to build 900,000 square feet of retail. We're going to build 1.2 million square feet of office, 1,500 hotel rooms. So lots of bars and restaurants. And we say it's a city within a city because it's going to be a neighborhood,
Yeah.
with all of these cool things to do. But the site itself was rail yards. So it was where Atlanta was founded, literally where Atlanta was founded and grew up from.
This is the
And so,
terminus area then? Was it be
yeah,
called?
that's why the
Okay.
city was called Terminus. So
Yeah.
all the rail lines terminated in a
Okay.
called the Circle Y. It's actually our logo right here. That's the
Okay.
Circle Y track. So all the tracks in the southeastern United States came together underneath what is now the CNN deck. And so
Okay.
that track
Interesting.
configuration still there. You can go to under the CNN deck and you can actually still see exactly that. So, matter of fact, when we're digging, we're finding cobblestones from Atlanta's original streets.
Oh, wow.
So because the site was rail yards, it didn't have water, sewer, power, roads, things like that, that we have to build all of that. Now we have incentives so that there's a state incentive and there's a local incentive. And the purpose of those incentives is to build the infrastructure that cities and governments typically build. We pay taxes and they use the tax money to build all those things. And the example I give is if CIM bought a property in Midtown, we would build the building and then plug it into the outlets at the street, water, sewer, power. It's all already there. In this case, we have to build it ourselves. So that's why we say we're building a city within a city,
Yeah.
not just because we have to build the infrastructure, but it's going to have all the elements that any city would have, from neighborhood serving retail to the entertainment district type of retail and hotel rooms and jobs and offices and all the other things that make a city.
And are a lot of companies and groups? I know we talk about Live Nation venue and hotels and all. Are people ready to invest or investing already? Where do things stand?
Yeah, it's really happening now. So we just finished our first two towers. That's in addition to a adaptive reuse building that we opened 4 years ago, an apartment building that we already, that was the first thing we did. There's a brewery at the base of that building. It's called Wildly Brewing. It's 162 apartments. It's fully occupied. And then
Okay.
our first two buildings that we just, our first two towers, which we just recently opened, one is called the Mitchell. It's an apartment building, 304 apartments with three restaurants at the base of it. That opened about 3 months ago, leasing up really, really well, beautifully amenitized building. And then the second building is Hotel Phoenix, which we just had a big grand opening party a week and a half ago. But that building we opened the first week of December. Both of these buildings are literally right across the street from the Mercedes-Benz logo on the
Yeah.
stadium. They're literally across the street. So we're really proud of those. So those two buildings obviously are open and operational for World Cup. The other building, the adaptive reuse building with the brewery at the base of it, is open for World Cup. There's a bridge that we tore down and rebuilt as part of our agreement with the city called the Steel Bridge. It's a pedestrian-only bridge that'll be activated for World Cup. We have a couple of parking lots that will be activated for World Cup, corporate activations. But then you jump over the tracks to the fan zone. So there's four more buildings under construction right now, and you alluded to it earlier. We have Cosm, which is I call it a sports bar on steroids, but the main
Okay.
feature of that building is like the Sphere in Vegas shrunk down inside the building and for watching sports. So I encourage anybody listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, Google Cosm, COSM. It's remarkable. It's such a cool thing, and we're really excited to have it. And then Live Nation is under construction. That's a 5,300 seat live music theater, state of the art. We have another hotel under construction. We'll announce who they are in the next couple of weeks. And then the fourth building is multi-tenant food and beverage. So the Irish Exit, Shake Shack. We're negotiating with the Museum of Ice Cream and a few other great retailers in that space. So Cosm will be open. Hotel Phoenix is open. The Mitchell's open. The Lofts at Centennial Yards South is open. And then a portion of the fan zone will be open. So those four buildings that make up the fan zone, two of them will still be under active construction. So we'll have to have a construction fence around that. But there's a parking structure under it, and that will be open. And a portion of the fan zone will be open. Cosm wants to be open as well.
Yeah.
So
So people,
Cosm and the Irish Exit will likely be open
that
for
sounds
World.
great. So people
Yeah.
need to get down there and check it out for
And Tino,
sure.
I want to say this too, because there's a misperception on this too, is everything you see under construction now, which is a lot. I mean, we had six buildings under construction at the same time, represents less than 25% of what we're
Okay.
going to. So
Yeah.
we're just getting started.
Yeah. So you're talking about several years before it's all finished, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's 2031, 2033 in that neighborhood. We have a
Okay.
long, long way to go, a lot more to
Yeah.
come.
You talked about the rail tracks. This brings me back to my days running the Chicago YMCA, and we had one of the uh, rail owners give us land to build a YMCA in Pilsen, little village community. And there was quite a bit of environmental work to do. I guess you had to go through that too when you have tracks and all kinds of things.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah. It's a difficult, I mean, to your point, it's a really difficult site to develop because
Yeah.
there's active rail lines running through it. There's a MARTA tunnel that goes right through the site that we
Okay.
have to build over. So you have to build these giant cantilever
Yeah.
structures over the tunnel. So it's a very, very difficult, complicated site to build on.
Yeah. Sounds like it's right in your wheelhouse though, Brian. So
I,
yeah.
I like I like complicated things. As my
Yeah.
wife says, I get bored easy. This job, you cannot get bored in this job because every single day somebody walks through that door with a problem you could not have anticipated the day before. And I love solving big, complicated problems. So it's been a lot of fun.
So what are you as you're thinking about a lot of people listening to this have a tech background. You guys involved with like AI and how does technology tie into what you're working on?
Yeah, it's a good question. We are working with a number of different companies right now to make sure that a couple of things. One, obviously, there's great telecommunication structure throughout the entire site.
Yeah.
So everybody's phones can connect
High
and
speed.
high speed. We also need to make sure and, working on, edge computer systems so that when we do build office buildings, big office tenants feel confident about their data needs to serve those buildings. COSM, for example, as you can imagine, a huge user of data. So we're building a fiber optic ring throughout
Oh,
the
great.
site, which we will own the fiber throughout the site, create our own little mini utility. We also have a digital signage district, so all the digital signage have to be connected. And then flipping over to security, which I would argue is my number one priority, is to make sure that we're using cutting edge security. From cameras to drones and using AI to detect problems throughout the site before they become bigger problems. License plate readers that are connected to the city's video integrations center. Reporting stolen cars. If you drive, into our parking structure, you're in a stolen vehicle, we're going to know about it immediately. They also have, drone technology and camera technology that could almost predict when something bad is going to happen just by
Yeah.
human behavior. There's people squaring up, or if there's a crowd forming, it'll automatically flag these kinds of things. We want to make sure that when you come to Centennial Yards, that you feel safe,
Yeah.
100% safe. And we're going to use technology to kind of really lean in on that.
You talk.
And the other
Oh, go
thing,
ahead.
just one
Yeah.
more point on that, because I'm learning about all this, and we always often refer to the Atlanta Hawks as our cousins because their owners, brothers, CIM group.
Right.
But the fan experience, I'm learning, begins before a fan leaves home, and
Yeah.
so we're working with the Hawks and the Falcons to figure out, like, maybe there's a singular app where you can reserve your parking space, make your dinner reservation, buy your ticket, reserve your spot at the bar, whatever it is, that you
Yeah.
can do it all through one integrated experience. And then, as we all know, all these big venues are moving towards, cashless venues.
Yes.
I was just at the NBA All-Star game 3 weeks ago, and at the where the Clippers play their arena, it's all cashless. They're like, I walked in and it scans your face, and there was a guy standing behind the gates, and he just said, "Hey, Brian, come on in." It didn't say anything to me, but my face was already scanned. I didn't have to show him a ticket. Same thing if you buy a beer or some food, you walk in, you just grab it and walk out, and it
Yeah.
bills you automatically. So I think the long term on this is that you'll see integration between Centennial Yards, State Farm Arena, and Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
No, that's fantastic. And it sounds like you're moving along with everybody else in terms of these tech changes, which is great. You mentioned, and I know given your background and working for Governor Schwarzenegger and President Obama, um, that you have a real passion to, make sure that, and you said it early on in our conversation, that the community's supported, that we're taking care of all people, that kind of thing. So, is it the housing that you have and the apartments? Would you say there's some affordability opportunities, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so 20% of all the units we build will be affordable at 80% of area median income
Oh,
for
great.
99. So we are building, I would say it's workforce housing, right? These
Yeah.
are cops and teachers and firemen and people who
Yeah.
are working site. We're doing that. We also have a 38% minority female business enterprise goal. So 38% of all of our subcontractors, and I should mention, we're the general contractor on all this. So we're not just the
Okay. You're the
owner.
GC. Yeah.
We created a construction company. We're building it ourselves, which really enables us to push that 38% number. So we're at 34% to date. So that's providing smaller companies, contractors who probably couldn't get a job working for a big project like this. They're getting their first opportunity to to land their first big contract, which is helping them get other work. We also have a 25% goal on hiring residents of the city of Atlanta for construction jobs. So 25% of the workforce that's actually out there building the project itself are residents of the city of Atlanta.
That's
We've
great.
also contributed, we're closing in on, I think, $40 million we've contributed to the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And
Wow.
we're building a
Yeah.
police substation and a police fire station, so that there's a lot of things that we're doing to make sure
Yeah.
that the community is
These
getting what
these
they
are
need.
things that people don't see, is why I love to have these podcasts too, so people can,
And I appreciate the question.
yeah, yeah, people can understand that
Yeah,
it's more than just building buildings and trying to make money. It's the whole thing. How do we help people
yeah,
as well?
yeah.
So, given that this is titled Leading with Relevance, we always like to get into a few leadership questions. So, one of the first ones I like to ask is, can you reflect on key lessons from your early career that shaped your leadership approach?
It's a great question. I think what's kind of helped me move along, even I'm thinking of my first job out of college. I worked for the city of Palm Springs, California. Sonny Bono was our former mayor and
Oh, wow.
congressman.
I remember
That's
when he was
how
mayor.
old I
Yeah,
am.
that was a while ago.
It was a little while ago, was being innovative. Like I worked in a department of economic development and they weren't being innovative or cutting edge. And I remember one of the first things I recognized was how important existing businesses were. Everybody at that time was so focused on business attraction, right? Everybody wanted to attract a company from someplace else, but you can create as many jobs, if not more, by focusing on your existing businesses and helping them grow. Now, this is a known thing now. Any economic developer watching this is going to go, yeah, we've been doing that for years, but not 1994. They called it smokestack chasing. Everybody was chasing,
Oh,
the big, company to move. So I created a business retention expansion program and researched all over the country about how do you do that? How do you work with existing businesses to make sure that they're staying and growing? Because you can create a ton of jobs that way. Um, but for me, like my background is mostly going into broken entities or creating a new thing. So like business retention expansion program in California, I created the California iHub program, which still exists to this day, which was a regional innovation program. I'm so proud of that because it's still nobody knows that I created that, but that doesn't matter. I love looking back and seeing the positive effect that that has been having over the last
yeah.
25 years in California, helping. And the idea was really to help the more rural, further areas further from the innovation centers connect to the innovation places in California. So I really like going into organizations and looking for something that's broken that needs to be fixed that maybe nobody wanted to fix or it wasn't cool to fix or I really enjoy doing that or going in and creating a brand new organization. So when I got to Invest Atlanta, it was insolvent. So that
Yeah.
organization was insolvent. And they handed me a plan to lay off half the employees the first week I was there.
Oh, wow.
So I loved kind of tinkering with it and trying to figure out how can we fix it and make it better. And I think I learned a lot of this kind of thinking from people like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
When my first big job was working for him, and it was the big thinking, anything is possible, nothing is impossible. You know, hard work can get you through almost anything. And Arnold has a book out right now about that, the value of hard work. Like you just gotta, if you work hard, you can get through anything or you can fix anything if you're willing to put the work into it. And then I got this job, unlikely job in the Obama administration, and then you're working at the federal level
Yeah.
and big, big problems, and all of that just kind of builds your confidence. Then you get through a thing like the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and you're like, I was part of the team that solved that problem. I can do anything. So kind of every experience I had kind of built confidence to be better and to do more and to think bigger.
So this next question I always ask, and it's kind of the flip side of what you were just talking about. A lot of times we learn more by failure or missteps than you do by, a smooth road to success. I certainly feel that in my own career. Do you have a time you want to share in terms you faced a setback or a challenge and you turned it into a learning opportunity? You might have one, maybe, or two. I don't know.
Yeah, I have so many. I'm trying to look my
That's what I'd
hands
say. We
full
all have a
of
lot.
dozens and dozens and dozens. I've alluded to a few of them. I mean,
Yeah.
Invest Atlanta was it was called the Atlanta Development Authority then, and
Okay.
um, I changed the name, but I had moved here. I left the Obama administration. I had a great job in the Obama administration, and came to Atlanta to run that organization, working for then Mayor Kasim Reed. And obviously, I didn't know. I actually didn't know the organization was insolvent.
Oh,
So truth is, I probably wouldn't have taken the job.
yeah.
Um,
Step
and I
one
was a
is do
little.
your research, right? A lesson
Yeah,
learned. Yeah.
it was a good lesson there. And I actually asked the head of the chair of our finance committee. I asked, I suspected there was a problem, and I actually asked her that question directly. I said, is the organization insolvent? And she said, of course not. And then after I got the job and learned that it was insolvent, I confronted her about it. And I said, why didn't you tell me? And she goes, well, you wouldn't have taken the job.
Oh, geez.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have five sons, five boys, and we just moved to Atlanta. But I was so frustrated about that. And then my father, who every single day I call my father every morning and we talk about things, everything. And he said, well, Brian, that's the job. The job is to fix it. So like I thought I was coming here to do economic development. My job was really to fix the economic development
Interesting.
entity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of turned it around, and instead of being frustrated, which I was every single day about the problems
Yeah.
that the organization had, the job became to fix those problems. And then I kind of changed my whole mindset around
Yeah.
that. That was the job.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of lessons learned from that. And one that I think we probably both experience is and you even asked the question, but make sure you really understand what you're getting yourself into before you, you know, dive
Yeah,
in.
probably should have done a little more research
Yeah.
there, but you
Yeah.
do. Yeah, definitely when you're evaluating an opportunity.
Yeah.
But it's also sometimes, and this is for young people, when you're at our age, you can't afford to make mistakes, but when you're younger, you can. And a quick example was
Yeah.
the oil spill. So I got a call from the Secretary of Commerce. His name was Gary Locke. And I was terrified. I think I was in the job, I was Deputy Assistant Secretary for maybe 6 months or something, 8 months. And I get a call from Secretary wants to meet with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. or whatever it was. So I was very nervous. I only met him once before. And you go up to the Secretary of Commerce's office, and it's intimidating. And
Yeah.
you sit down, and he starts explaining to me that the White House set up this National Incident Command on the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and they're looking for somebody to run the economic solutions team. And do you want to do that? And so my first question was, well, what is that? And he
Yeah.
goes, I have no idea, but the question is, do you want to do it? And I need to know by the end of the day today.
Oh, wow. Eh.
My answer was, sure, I'll do it. Uh, and I don't regret it. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my career. But, that's one of those things where, yeah, sometimes you don't have all the information.
Yeah.
Uh, but something like that was like, look, I like going into, as I mentioned earlier, difficult problems. I hate going into jobs where I'm just pushing the buttons that the guy or the person before me pushed.
Yeah.
Um, I want to create my own buttons. I want
Yeah.
to create my own control panel. So don't always say no to the unknown is
Yeah.
what
I
I would.
love that. I love that.
Young,
Well, I was going to ask you this last question because we're running out of time and you've sort of answered it, but I'll ask it anyways. Maybe you have a different thought. So if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice regarding leadership, what would it be?
oh, such a great question. I've always like even here, I see myself as I work for them.
Okay.
My job is first of all, I'm very collegial. My leadership style, I encourage people to challenge me and call me out if I'm wrong. Like don't let me be wrong for God's sakes.
Yeah.
But my job is to really make sure that everybody in this organization has the cover and the resources, and I've said this about every organization I've been in, the cover and the resources to do their job. And in exchange, it's their job to make me look good. It's their
Yeah.
job, like that's that's one of the things. But there was another lesson that I share with every organization that I've ever worked for, and this came from Barack Obama. So President Obama, during his campaign for when he ran for president the first time, and this was a rule throughout his administration, was there were essentially three rules. And he sat us all down once. It was a group of about 100 senior leaders in the administration, and there were three rules, which was build it from the bottom up, which I really loved at the time because in government, you'll get a Harvard professor or some CEO who comes out of the private sector into the public sector, wants to create a program, and they're not thinking, so they build it from the top down. They're not thinking
Hmm.
about the people that it affects on the bottom. So you always have to think about what is the end result you're trying to achieve, and how do you want to affect the human being that is being supported or helped by this program. So build it from the bottom up. The second was treat everyone with respect. So I literally tell everybody here, my expectation is you treat everyone with respect, from the
Great.
person you're on the elevator with to the receptionist in the lobby. Like you are part of an organization that represents something bigger and greater, and you need to always remind yourself of that, even when you're out on at the bar on the weekend or at a restaurant
Yeah.
or on the soccer field. Treat everyone with respect. And the last was no drama, which is my favorite one. So no drama Obama was, drama is a energy killer, right?
Yeah, for
We
sure.
spend so much time and effort on drama, and the expectation of a high functioning organization is that drama is not tolerated.
Yeah.
If you see drama, end it as quickly as possible. So those are my three kind
Yeah.
of rules how I run any organization.
No, I love that. And particularly the last point, no drama Obama is something I'll remember. But yeah, a lot of times people, I guess, accept that it's going to go on versus nipping it in the bud. So yeah, that's
Nipping it
great
in the
advice for
bud.
everybody. So Brian,
Absolutely.
thanks so much for taking the time out of
My
your
pleasure.
crazy busy schedule to do this. It's great catching up with you, and appreciate you taking the time. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Everybody needs to go down and look at the Centennial Yards and go to the
Thank
hotel or go to a bar, do something.
Yeah, thank you. And Tino, thank you for all you've done for our region over the years and supporting our technology ecosystem, our technology rise, and for the work you do now. So it's really nice reconnecting with you.
Yeah, same here.